Welcome to Innovation Essentials Module 2. We're going to look today at designing an innovation strategy. So just to recap, this is based on the book Be Less Zombie. Please don't feel under any obligation to buy the book. This is designed to stand alone, but if you would like additional content and resources, there's plenty in the book that can help you. So last time we looked at the context for why we even care about all of this stuff. So we looked at the 4 stages of life that an organization typically has, and the need really to occupy this top right-hand box, the growth state with its highly entrepreneurial and is able to bring all of its resources to bear on outcomes that customers care about both now and in the future. Great dynamic resource allocation. We also looked at some of the problems that can turn up inside organizations that perhaps have the wrong emphasis on bureaucracy, so creative constipation. People just don't want to share ideas that are anything other than what will go along with the status quo, and there are problems that come with that. Creative indigestion. Even when we do suggest ideas, they find it hard to find a home inside the organization and tend to get spat out fairly easily. There's some more resources in the book in section 5 on that topic. Finally, we looked at a definition of innovation, the continuous pursuit of profitable relevance. That's what it's all about, guys and gals. It's about relevance. How do we stay relevant today, and how do we move into a greater state of relevance in the future, knowing that things are going to change? And this is the way that I perceive that some of the great innovative companies in the world tend to think. They may use slightly different words, but this is their ultimate focus. So today we are moving on. We're looking at designing an innovation strategy. Now, I'm going to say right from the start, this is a huge area. It can get really complex and sophisticated, but it really doesn't have to. The reality is, organizations that I work for, most of them don't have an innovation strategy. So just making the choice to take a step forward in this space immediately gives you an advantage and immediately helps things to come together in a way that it won't be inside your competitors, pretty much, I would say. So I'm going to share with you 3 tools that can help you make progress to get you started, and then there are a ton of other resources out there and consultants willing to help you take it to that next level. But my advice to you is just start somewhere, and I hope that the tools that we share today are going to be useful. So as I said, 3 key ideas that I want to share with you that I see inside really great innovative organizations. The first is they think in 3 simultaneous time zones. They're not just thinking about how can we do today better. They are thinking about today, tomorrow, and the future, all at the same time, and resourcing them all effectively. So we'll look at what that means and what that takes. Secondly, I'm going to introduce you to a simple but powerful innovation strategy framework. So whilst it's important to be thinking in 3 time zones, you kind of need to get down to the next level of granularity around what kind of things do we need to be doing so that innovation really can show up. So I'm going to share with you a framework that I use and has been very effective and is really the heartbeat of the Be Less Zombie book. And then finally, I want to introduce you to a metric that makes innovation more inevitable. This stuff only really shows up if there is a measure in place that pulls it forward. And whilst there are tons and tons of metrics that you could use, there's one metric that seems to be more powerful than the others, and it's a great place to start. So I want to introduce you to that to give you something to start working with. So there are additional resources in the book. In the whole of part 1 is really dedicated to innovation strategy. It's at a very pragmatic level. But again, don't feel this isn't a hard sell. You don't have to buy the book. I'm really hoping that you can make some good progress through this course. I know you will anyway. My view is that an organization's strength in the short term is often its downfall in the long term. What do I mean by that? Organizations, in my experience, are designed to deliver repeatability and certainty. And that makes sense. You know, we have a known customer, we have a known product, and we need to deliver as much of that as effectively and as efficiently and as profitably as possible. That repeatability is important because it means that we understand the cause and effect of different actions across the system. And it makes absolute sense. It's good management and it's wise stewardship of the finite resources that we've got at our disposal. But often there is an unintended consequence of working in this way. If our major focus is making today's business better and more efficient, we tend only to develop small incremental ideas that fit nicely into today's ways of working. So effectively, we're just doing this, we're making more of the same. So what? Why is that a problem? Well, the impact is that most companies generally have this bias towards incremental ideas. You've built a system that can really only tolerate incrementalism, and anything that comes in that looks vaguely different from today and that could potentially slow down or interrupt what we do is not going to be very welcome. The system does not compute. And whilst incremental innovation is important to keep things moving, it generally isn't sufficient. And I really recommend this book to you, Whiplash. It's a couple of years old now, but there's some really great insights in there that give you an idea about how fast things really are moving. And its author, Joey Ito, who used to head up the MIT Media Lab, says this: incremental improvement guarantees obsolescence over time, especially in fast changing industries. Now, that's quite a strong statement. Guarantees obsolescence over time. Small incremental ideas are not going to cut it. They bias marginal gains, but they're usually copied really quickly by competitors. So we have to make this shift to moving into a state where we can create bolder ideas. I mean, why don't they show up inside most organizations? So how do we escape this state of being stuck in developing only incremental ideas? Well, there are three questions that great innovators tend to ask right from the outset. And they deliberately design their organizations and ways of working within them so that ideas that keep us in business today and tomorrow can show up more inevitably. So here are the three questions that I observe that they ask. The first is, well, how do we want our future to look? Most organizations do this. Here's where we want to be. Here's what we want the future to look like, from a vision point of view, from a purpose point of view, and also some commercial goals. We need all three of those. But we can't leave it there because, unfortunately, the future is coming and it's got some different ideas. It's got some different priorities. There are trends, there are weak signals that we can pick up that are coming from the future. And our job is to take those and ask two questions. Well, what's happening and what does it mean? How do we interpret what's happening and how do we reconcile that with the future that we want to create? And you're going to figure out something somewhere in the middle and ask the third question: what's it going to take to get there? And often we're very keen to get moving with number one and number three, but miss out number two. But you have to bring that into the mix. And that's what great innovators are doing. They're asking the questions, what decisions does tomorrow need us to make today? Where should we play and how are we going to win in the context of trends that are coming our way? So based on that strategic view of the future, we can now apply some tools to help us create the conditions from where the right mix of ideas can show up, whether they're incremental or transformational. And the first one of those tools is to look at time and focus. And the question that I will often ask a leader inside an organization when I'm working with them for the first time is, how big is your tomorrow? If you look at the amount of resource we spend on running today's business versus how much we dedicate to tomorrow, over the years, I've found the answer tends to be, well, we spend 95% on today and the loose change is on tomorrow. And everybody recognizes that that's not going to work. Something needs to change. I mean, it's a crude indicator, but it does give you an idea of how much innovation really can show up, but also of the kinds of innovation that can show up. Because if the status quo is in charge, you know that it's most likely that only incremental innovation is going to show up. So great innovators recognize this, and based on their strategic direction, they think in 3 simultaneous time zones, and that helps them to resource and focus in a way that is most likely to bring innovation forward in the short and the medium and the long term. So let's have a look at that. So here's a tool that I highly recommend. It's based on something called the Ansoff matrix. 2 axes running along the bottom, we've got technology, product, solution. It's the stuff we make. What do we actually do? And on the vertical axis, we have the customers and the markets. So what do we do? Who do we serve? And as we build this model out, we can see that there are different types of innovation with different things going on. Right at the bottom left, we have the stuff that we make today and the customers that we want to serve today, both the ones who are our current customers and the ones who we haven't yet managed to get yet, but they're in the same market space. It's known cause and effect. It's incremental. It's pretty certain that what we put out there is going to work because we've done this kind of thing before. So that's a big focus for most organizations. Moving out from there, we have extend innovation. So we can be extending our core product into an adjacent market. So people trying to solve a very similar problem to the customers that we are serving, and maybe our technology, our solutions could show up in some form in another market. And that's a very well-established growth approach in most companies, but not all. So if you don't do much of that, have a think about that. And along the bottom here, along the horizontal axis, we've got today's customers and what might be some products and services that we can offer them based on the things we know they're trying to get done. What maturing technology and business model could come together to deliver some new value to them in a way that we don't deliver today. And then finally, around the edge, we have got exploring. So brand new products, bleeding edge technology, customer categories that don't even exist yet. What might that future look like? And inevitably, there is a ton of failure out there in those edges because we're dealing with lots of unknowns. So along the top here, you can see that the colors indicate a split, 70, 20, 10. Now, we're going to look at that in a bit more focus, in a bit more detail in a moment. But the idea is with this grid is that you're trying to build a balanced portfolio of experiments and work all around this grid so that you've always got something coming from the future that is maturing to become a revenue stream for tomorrow. And that is a very high level view at what an innovation portfolio can look like, and a way of thinking about how do we resource the innovation that we need. Now we're going to look at 70, 20, 10 in a moment and whether that's the right thing for everybody. But that helps set a context for us to now go to the next level of detail. So in enhance, what's going on here? It's not the same as what's going on in the other two. We're looking at optimization of today's business model. We're defending and extending the core business. We're thinking about how the profit that we make today can maybe move into other areas to fund tomorrow. And importantly, we're asking the question, what should we stop? What are the things that are taking up resources today that we know well, we love dearly, but it's time to say goodbye to them because they're not really giving us return on investment for tomorrow? The major focus here is operational efficiency. And as I said earlier, it's highly predictable. The stuff we do here will probably work because we know the space. However, when we move out to extend, and we're moving to a different form of innovation, we're really looking at growth. And the scale up phase of an idea, something that has perhaps come down the line, customers like, and we're just trying to find a business model that works in that new context. But it's a mixture of known and unknown. So it doesn't necessarily say that everything that happens here will work, but we're moving in less certainty than perhaps we were in enhance. And then finally, we've got the explore world, which is exploring the future. It's about running experiments. It's trying to figure out cause and effect of some things that could show up in the future and bring us some profitability. So lots of disruptive ideas can show up here. We can afford to play around. We're not spending lots of money, but we need to be aware that this is a high failure zone. And this is one of the reasons why organizations don't, in my experience, do enough of this stuff, is because no one likes the failure. And we're going to look at how we can deal with that in ensuing modules. So that's all great. It gives us a way of thinking about how at least we can bucket together some resource focus so that the right kind of products and sort of right kind of innovation is always moving down the pipeline towards us. But let me now take it to another level of detail, if you like, which is, well, that's great. That's working at a very sort of conceptual level. What do we need to actually be doing in those areas so that this kind of innovation can show up.